We are doing an old school JW Thoughts video. I've got my hat and glasses on, and my asymmetric brain has cooked up a hypothesis. One surrounding the idea that the leadership of the Jehovah's Witnesses knows that the preaching work and the things they tell Jehovah's Witnesses to do are ineffective, and yet they just want them to do it anyway, whether this comes from a place of malice, whether this comes from a genuine place of, well, we got to do something with our time, or whether this comes from powerful people just wanting to exercise their influence and control over others. I guess that'll be left up to you to decide, but let's do this. Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally, and today we are, well, I already told you what we're doing, so I guess I don't have to tell you again. Why do I do that all the time? It's kind of curious. Quickly, before we get into it though, don't forget to drop a like on the video as it helps to get out to more people on the YouTube and is very much appreciated. With all of that being said, I want to start this off with a story. So back in the day when Wally was just a wee lad, I participated in preaching with my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother was born in 1911. She was a pioneer forever. A pioneer forever, so much so that she actually got a governing body member to personally visit her in her home just to talk to her. Now, this is the days before JW broadcasting and all of that, so it wasn't just a photo op or a publicity stunt or writing an article about her in a magazine, so he showed up for that. No, he was just in the area and learned that there was a pioneer that had pioneered for like, I can't even remember, something like 80 years. And wanted to just go and say, hey, and I can't remember his name. It's whatever one had the crazy eyebrows, but she had a picture in her kitchen up of it, and I remember seeing it all the time. But anyway, that's really neither here nor there. But when I went preaching with her and my grandma, one of the things that we would do is drive to laundromats and leave 4, 5, 6, 10 Watchtower and Awake magazines in various laundromats in the evening. Why did I say that? I have no idea. Doesn't matter. Now, one of the reasons that they did this and were teaching me how to do it was because for years, at least through the 70s, 80s, and early parts of the 90s, Watchtower produced a lot of stories about people that went into a laundromat or some type of waiting room and picked up a Watchtower Awake magazine, began reading it, and that sparked some interest in becoming a Jehovah's Witness, and maybe they eventually did. These were published. I'm not going to read through them, but I'll just flash a couple here on the screen so you can see that I'm not just talking a bunch of beans here. And I think they did this because if Watchtower talks about something in a positive way, people will usually do that thing. So what am I on about? Well, later on in the 2010s, I remember being with a service overseer and having to go and counsel people about how they were using literature because it had become known that people were doing the old school method where they would leave it in a laundromat or a waiting room or something. And the new thought process behind this, I couldn't find any specific references to this, so my best guess is that this came directly from circuit overseers. If anyone out there in EXJW land knows exactly when they had this shift of policy, I would be curious. You can email me or just comment and I can pin it or whatever. But I remember going with the service overseer and counseling people that they weren't to leave Watchtower and Awake magazines at waiting rooms anymore because this was, disrespecting the literature. It was treating it like garbage. Most people would just end up throwing it away. We didn't want to have a bunch of waste. Why print so many Watchtower and Awake magazines when we didn't have to? And obviously, they hardly print any. I think they just do like one Watchtower a year now for the public. So their whole scope of printing magazines has gone way, 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 way down. But there was a period where they initially said, wow, look, all these wonderful results that we got from leaving magazines in waiting rooms. And then snap your fingers and all of a sudden, this thing that used to bring people into the truth no longer brings people into the truth, and it shouldn't be done. So the effectiveness has nothing to do about the numbers or how, tracking that. It has everything to do with whatever the leaders just happen to say. Now, there's another example of this exact same thing happening, and that has to do with how to go about street witnessing. Now, Watchtower for years has encouraged people, for pretty much actually the whole time that they've been around, to go evangelize on the streets. But they never wanted people to just stand around looking at each other. And there are more examples than we have time to actually read. I'll just go through a couple. Standing in one spot and simply displaying the magazines is not as effective as taking the initiative to approach individuals. Generally, approaching people is more effective than simply standing in one place or just walking along displaying the magazines. How to do it? Approach people. In doing this, we need to be selective. Some experienced publishers try to establish eye contact as they approach the person, and after a warm greeting, they go right into their presentation. This one is called Street Witnessing That is Effective. Take the initiative. It is generally better to approach people than simply stand or sit in one place for passerby to approach you. And then this one I thought was the most telling. Street witnessing is effective. Some publishers have been observed standing on a busy street corner talking to one another while scores of people pass by unnoticed. Rather than simply stand side by side with magazines, it is more effective to separate and approach people. Now, this was the advice that they had given through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and then boom! With the snap of a finger, in 2014, they say, actually, you know how for the last 60 years we've been saying that you should approach people, that it's ineffective to just stand on a street corner? Well, we've cooked up this new method of preaching the good news that's going to be more effective than anything else. And what is it?
I'm just a cart made up of bits and pieces, a frame, a handle, and some wheels. But I'm a cart that helps to give a witness. What is that like? Let me tell you how it feels. If you could see what I see, if you could visit all the places that I go, if you could see the people there and get a glimpse of all the faces that I get to know.
Now, one interesting thing is that I did this a day, it was about 6 hours, maybe it was even longer than that, of training. Yes, you have to be trained by a Watchtower representative on how to effectively stand next to a cart and not talk to anybody. And very specifically, it was reiterated that you are not to go up and approach people, to just stand there and not say anything and allow other people to go and approach you. Even though just a couple of years prior to that, they would have said that this is an ineffective way. That, we've actually observed some people just standing side by side and we don't want to do that. Until we tell people to go on a street corner and just stand side by side. Now, before we look at a third example of Watchtower sort of flipping the script on what is and what isn't effective preaching, I think we just need to take one step back and reflect on the fact that Watchtower should be pretty good at this. They should be pretty good at public advertising campaigns. They have schools, they have training classes, they, send people to do this rigorous training about how to become better preachers, how to draw people to become Jehovah's Witnesses. Their whole identity is surrounding the idea that they are public preachers of this good news of God's kingdom. And not only that, but they have data. even before data collection became a ubiquitous thing, the Jehovah's Witnesses were doing it. For decades, they were collecting data from every single Jehovah's Witness about their preaching habits. When they would go preaching, how they would go preaching, how many magazines they would do, how many hours they spent, how many Bible studies they had, what areas that they preached in, what businesses that they preached in. They have all of this data to go back on, and they have feedback from Jehovah's Witnesses, and if people were sufficiently annoyed or angry, feedback from non-Jehovah's Witnesses who might be calling or writing in to the main headquarters, because if someone calls a local Kingdom Hall, they're probably not going to talk to anyone. If they say, hey, please don't contact me ever again to a normal Jehovah's Witness, that witness is going to write their name down, and that may or may not mean that they'll be visited again. But I imagine that it's not a crazy thing to say that there probably is a regular stream of upset individuals that were contacting the Jehovah's Witnesses either by phone or by letter, expressing their displeasure with the annoyance of having to deal with Jehovah's Witnesses coming to their door, place of work, or whatever the case might be. And with all of this data that they have, I feel like they're not really using it, because in that other example, they can say, oh, this is not effective. And then a week later, they can say, well, this is more effective. And what they do is just control the narrative. They'll tell you the positive stories about someone coming into the truth from reading a magazine in a laundromat. And then all of a sudden, they'll stop doing that and just tell you positive stories about people coming into the truth by seeing a cart. So they can control the narrative for normal Jehovah's Witnesses, but them on the dev side of it, if you will, they actually have more data to work off of. Except we have a little bit of data that we can examine for this third example that I want to use. So what got me onto this was I was looking up how many Kingdom Halls were still active in my local area, and when I looked at Google Maps, I don't know why it had never occurred to me before, but I saw that they had reviews. And I suppose in my head, I just assumed that the only negative reviews would be from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that were trolling. But that's not what I found at all. I found a couple of examples of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses trolling. A curious one from someone that mentioned me that was also in one of the Kingdom Halls that I used to attend. So I'm thinking someone that watches the channel might actually know me. And anyway, their last name is a little suspicious, but that's neither here nor there. But what I found was very interesting, because now we all have an opportunity to see what public opinion is. Now you Google reviews. Those are going to be, not every single person. It's not like a census. These are people that are annoyed or upset. But the consistency with all of the Kingdom Halls in my area, I looked at all of the reviews for about 30 different ones here in the Pacific Northwest, and it was the same thing over and over again. Another funny thing that I caught on to was I started writing down the names of the witnesses that were leaving positive comments, and all of them were the same. It was like the same 5 people doing it for all of their region or in their area. So all of them would leave 5 or 7 or sometimes 10. Someone had left them for all of them. And that was funny too, because I recognized some of the names of the witnesses that were doing that. Anyway, so I just want to read you some of the feedback that I think Watchtower has been getting for years, but now we can all see that. Now, I did think for a minute, well, how many of these negative reviews are going to be ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that are just angry apostates, kind of trolling? I don't think that the specificity of these stories could be attributed to apostates, so I'll just throw that one out there. I do not appreciate receiving pamphlets, information, in letters addressed from my financial institution. That's a pretty grimy move. Please do not send creepy, unwanted mail, especially if you're getting the names and addresses of random people illicitly. Forcing their religion down our throats by constantly sending spam mail is a huge waste to do that, and you're really helping destroy your God's planet by sending paper mail to people that just going to get thrown out. Stop sending weird religious mail. I do not want to hear from you. A few years ago, my mother died, and I was sent an extremely harassing message from the church in the area she lived in urging me to pray for her soul. My partner just received this. Doing this to people who are grieving is absolutely unacceptable harassing behavior. Shame on you. 2F, which I do not recognize, or current resident. I wish the religious harassment to stop. This place will not stop sending religious propaganda to my address, addressed to someone who has never lived here. I've never requested contact. I'm not interested. It's invasive and feels like harassment at this point. Repeatedly sending unwanted materials to a private home, especially when the person it's addressed to clearly doesn't live here or is not outreach. It's harassment. Stop invading people's space with your unwanted mail. Spams surrounding area with the leaflets and unwanted mail. How did you get my address? Not sure why members of this organization found it necessary to send unwanted junk mail to neighbors. Marcus V sends offensive unwanted letters. Are you so desperate to practice this? Save your stamps and yourselves. I'm getting letters from this address from Charlene G, telling me to read the Bible. I find this rude and annoying, and there is no stated way to opt out of this. I will be calling this church to tell them to not send me another letter. I just received one in the mail. I don't like this at all. This should be illegal. If people want to join your little cult, they can do it freely. You don't have to send letters and come to people's doors. If you were better at marketing or social media, you would probably have a better turnout, but you resort to paper letters and 18-year-olds who don't know any better, going door to door. Somehow, they bought or stole my address/information and mailed me a handwritten letter promoting their religion. Not okay, as I did not sign up or inquire, and it is creepy. Stop harassing people. I will ask you kindly, please do not leave handwritten notes in my mailbox. Have a blessed day. These creepy weirdos got my address somehow and keep sending unwanted mail to both me and my husband. Not cool. I received a hand-addressed envelope from Margaret L. with this return address, but not the organization. Noted in the upper left corner of the envelope, rather than open the envelope, I first looked up the address and discovered it belonged to Jehovah's Witnesses. The letter was deliberately made to look personal. I do not trust any organization that's attempting to trick me into consuming its literature by making me think that I was looking at a personal letter. They are sending snail mail out to people's homes. I want it to stop. Leave me alone. I am not interested in anything you spout. These people are aggressive and creepy with their harassment tactics. Why bully people who live near the church to try and force them to attend? I have no idea why I'm receiving this. This church is sending out junk mail. I have received 3 in the last year. They're off-putting and not asked for. I get junk mail like any other normal person, but this is silly. Sends spam mail under their names so as to bypass their post office requests. Stop sending me junk mail. Now, this wasn't just exclusive to people doing Google reviews about Kingdom Halls. I typed in Jehovah's Witness letters, and a couple different magazine articles had popped up about, God, this is really annoying. How do I get this to stop? I found a heap of Reddit posts, some with a lot of traction on them, all saying the same thing. Handwritten letter from the Jehovah's Witnesses. Found this letter in my mailbox from an unknown address. Weird thing is, it is handwritten and was addressed to me. I received an unsolicited handwritten letter from the Jehovah's Witnesses. This one had 6.3 thousand upvotes and 1.4 thousand comments. How can I stop Jehovah's Witnesses from sending me handwritten letters every single goddamn week? And then they write a whole essay about the whole situation. This comment was kind of a banger. It said, I did in Gardenville. It looked like it was written by the Zodiac Killer. An insult to the Zodiac Killer. I'd rather have him than them. That's crazy. Anyone else get handwritten letter from a Jehovah's Witness? Jehovah's Witnesses keep sending me mail, so I return the favor. And they go and say they signed up the Kingdom Hall for like Church of Scientology or other spam things, just like giving them a taste of their own medicine. I think clearly we can see that people are very upset. They weren't happy about this. And yet Jehovah's Witnesses continued to be told that this was actually effective. If you just go on jw.org and type in letter writing, you will find a bunch of global news or news release things that say letter writing continues to yield encouraging results. Many Jehovah's Witnesses are finding joy in sending letters as part of their personal ministry. The following experiences from the United States demonstrate that these efforts are effectively spreading the Bible's comforting message. So, the Jehovah's Witness leaders can say in 1 month that this is not going to be effective, and then magically get new light and change their mind, and the next month later say, hey, this is going to be effective. Just like leaving magazines at laundromats or standing while you're doing your street witnessing versus approaching people. Whether or not it's going to be a useful thing to send letters to people. I don't think that any of this matters to the leadership. I'm pretty confident that they know just how ineffective this is. Essentially a waste of time and money and resources. So why have people do it? Why have people essentially play the lottery and call that effective? Calling this letter writing effective is like saying that playing the lottery is an effective investment strategy because, hey, there's always one winner. So obviously it must be effective. Handpicking these couple of positive results doesn't mean that the whole thing is effective. This is just special pleading gone turbo mode. So I think, to me, this signals that the leadership is well aware that it's not actually having any positive effects really in a measurable way. And I think it really shows that they just want to keep people busy. Because when people stop being busy doing Jehovah's Witness things, that's when they wake up. Look at the pandemic. The pandemic had a windfall of people waking up and leaving the organization because they weren't as busy. They could breathe for once and actually whip out the mirror and get self-reflective and say, is this thing serving me? What is this doing to increase my longevity and my happiness while I'm here on planet Earth? And a lot of people came to the conclusion that doing the JW shuffle just wasn't it. And I think the leadership knows this. So they have to just try and spin something that keeps people busy. Did they really think that this whole Jesus movie, what is it called? Good News According to Jesus? That whole series of video was actually going to be a good use of millions of dollars? Or do they just want to appear to be busy because then people don't have time to wake up? I personally think that that's the answer. You can draw whatever conclusions that you feel like doing. Maybe they have this approach of there's no such thing as bad publicity. Maybe, I don't really know. You'd have to ask them. I'm only one guy, and I can only come up with the ideas that I think sound reasonable to me. So with all of that being said, stay safe, be kind, and don't forget to spend more time loving the things you love than hating the things you hate. Now go out there and have a good ass day.